All right. Good morning, P10I's Daily Show. Happy Thursday morning. Hope your day is off to a great start. We're halfway through it here, a little bit later start to the day. My name is Alan. I'm happy to be your host today. Currently serving as the Chief Operating Officer for ICE and the faculty member in our fitness athlete division. Here on Leadership Thursday, we talk all things leadership, business management, clinic management, so on and so forth. It is also Gut Check Thursday. So this week's Gut Check Thursday comes from the Mayhem affiliate track. This is a workout we did here at the gym on Tuesday that looks simple, looks like it will be easy and fast, and it's on the faster end, but it's pretty devastating. So we have 10 down to 1 descending rep scheme of a burpee double dumbbell deadlift. So going to drop down burpee between the dumbbells, chest touching the floor, jump up from the burpee. As you jump up, you're pulling a pair of dumbbells with you to lock out the deadlift, doing 10 of those, 9 of those, 8 of those, all the way down to 1 with a fixed amount of calories on a bike afterwards. So if you have an assault bike, you're doing 10 or 8 calories. If you have an echo bike, you're doing 8 or 6 calories. So you can imagine somewhere around the round of 7 and 6 of those burpee dumbbell deadlifts, it switches to spending more time on the bike than the burpees, and it quickly becomes an assault bike workout. So that was a fun workout, definitely doable under 10 minutes. Some of the coaches here got through it around 8 or 9 minutes on Tuesday when we did it. Definitely a sub 15-minute workout. So choose your dumbbells appropriately, scale the calories on the bike if you need, and post your time lapse and tag us in that to participate and play along with Gut Check Thursday. Some courses coming your way. We have Total Spine Thrust coming up with Justin Dunaway. That'll actually be at South College down in Knoxville, Tennessee. That'll be next weekend. That's the weekend of July 23rd and 24th. The last weekend of July, the 30th and the 31st, you can join Zach Morgan down at the University of Georgia. He'll be teaching cervical spine management. That same weekend, Alexis Morgan will be out in Utah near Salt Lake City for clinical management, fitness athlete, pregnancy, and postpartum live. And then the first weekend of August, you could join Mitch Babcock down in the Pittsburgh area for Fitness Athlete Live, and you can join Lindsay Huey out in Arizona for extremity management. And then if you're looking for some online courses, Rehab of the Injured Runner Online fires back up on July 26th. So that's what's coming your way from ICE. So let's talk about today's episode. So we're going to talk about risk, about business risk that is over the years, as Jeff and I have consulted with organizations, not only to bring in our courses for Con Ed, but also just about how they run things. We have been continually amazed at how risk-adverse physical therapists are. We talk about this a lot in our courses from a treatment perspective of how risk-adverse physical therapists are in their practice and their treatment and management of patients, avoiding things like spinal manipulation, avoiding things like deadlifts and squats and more functional movement, and trending towards passive modalities and really low-intensity exercise, if any exercise is even indeed involved at all in the plan of care. So we're quite aware that as a profession, we are very risk adverse. We trend towards easy and safe, but I want to challenge and push back that what appears to be easy and safe from a risk perspective is often the opposite. And the same is true for running your business, for managing your clinic, for working with and alongside those folks who work underneath you. So first things first, I want to just let you know that we have really bad news. If you're sitting here listening to me right now and you're a physical therapist, you have already committed the most risky thing you could possibly do in your life by becoming a physical therapist. That when we step back, we get objective, we gather the data, we look at physical therapy as a profession, very risky profession to get into, right? We look at the average student loan debt of almost $150,000 at about $148,600. So we'll call it 150 grand. And trying to conceptualize that amount of debt, what does that translate into? Well, most of us have student loans running 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% interest. And so that looks like about $2,000 a month in student loan payments compared to if we pull out folks in academia, if we pull out CEOs of modality companies and equipment companies who happen to still have a physical therapy license. If we just look at full-time practicing physical therapists in the United States, the average salary is only 65 grand. So we have about $2,000 a month that we're paying against a student loan compared to about $4,200 a month on average take home after taxes. So we're spending about half of our money on our student loans. Most folks who are physical therapists are going to be paying on their student loans for quite some time. So good news, bad news, take it how you want it. You've already done the most risky thing you could possibly do in physical therapy by becoming a physical therapist, right? You've come into a profession that largely underpays physical therapists, that has a very high barrier to entry financially. So I guess rest assured that you've already taken the biggest step you could possibly take, and that we have to look at it of how can we try to make that better, right? How can we try to get ahead and make sure that we're not paying student loans until we die? And that looks like being comfortable and learning how to more objectively assess risk so that we can make financial decisions that have a return that actually moves us ahead financially, not only for our own personal finance, but for the long-term financial health of our clinic as well. So the other thing I want to comment on is that largely, especially those of us in outpatient orthopedics, we are kind of a luxury, right? People can live in pain. The low back pain is probably not going to physically kill them. We know the sequela of that downstream doesn't look too well when people start to take pain medication and get involved in surgeries and stuff. But by and large, people can get by with pain for a long period of time. We know that. We see that output when they come in for their initial evaluation, that they've usually been in pain for quite some time before they've decided enough is enough. So especially those of us in outpatient orthopedics, even more so those of us in athletic performance and recovery, we're offering a luxury service. So combined with the high cost of entry into the profession, the low pay of the profession, and the luxury type service that we provide, we've already kind of taken on a lot of risky behavior without even really acknowledging and recognizing it. So let's talk about how, if we think, well, it sounds kind of like we're at rock bottom, how do we go up from here? The first thing is when we're looking at any decision, personal, but especially when we're thinking about the framework of the outcome for our clinic, is what is the greatest possible cost this would ever have for the clinic? So trying to look downstream of, if I make this decision, what does this look like? If I am making the decision to retrofit my clinic with a squat rack and an assault bike and stuff, what does that cost look like? What does that cost look like maybe as a monthly payment on a credit card? If I'm thinking about buying a new high-low table, what does that look like? Is there a payment plan? If I'm paying on a credit card, trying to conceptualize what that's actually going to cost me in the long term. What can I expect to possibly maximally pay? Maybe even if I'm paying on a card or a loan that has some interest, what does that look like? And is that a cost I'm willing to take on? So I want to give a couple examples, using ICE as an example, and then using your own kind of clinical practice of ways to branch out in your practice is a way to kind of conceptualize and start to frame risk. So a good example is the courses we teach. We try to make it very affordable for clinics. Our ultimate end goal is that everybody wins, that we have a full house. And because we get a full house, usually the host ends up paying a very small amount per clinician, or maybe even gets free courses for the clinician. So, but let's start at the bottom and say, if everything goes wrong, what is the maximal cost to me? And what is the potential return on investment, to start to get an idea of, is this worth it? Is this risk worth it? So with our courses, if you choose our open model, every 5 people that sign up, we give you a free seat. So let's say that you have 5 clinicians and you're thinking, okay, I have room for 30 people. I have 5 of my own clinicians. If 25 people sign up, I get 5 free courses. I get about $3,500-ish free of courses. So that's the best possible outcome. What's the worst possible outcome? Nobody signs up and I have to pay for all 5 of my people out of pocket. What does that cost look like? It looks about like $3,500. Now we can stop there and say, do I have $3,500? If the answer is no, then we already know this is maybe too risky of a decision. If the answer is yes, I do, but I don't want to pay that if I don't have to, then we're kind of in the gray area where we can move forward and start to evaluate the return on investment. Now we look at the other end and say, what is that return on investment? We're looking at a potential of, if everything goes well, then the only thing I'm out is buying some coffee in the morning and some bananas, right? Maybe $100 for the weekend. So in an optimal situation, I pay $100, I get 5 free seats, and I get $3,500 for free of continuing education courses. So that looks like return on investment of about $3,150. So 3,150%. That is quite a large return on investment. So by starting to look at these scenarios, sitting down, writing out the math, what is the best possible outcome? What is the worst possible outcome? What is the return on investment? We can start to understand, is this worth it? So we start with, do I have the money to pay all of those seats in the worst case scenario? If the answer is yes, then we can begin to proceed and look at what is return on investment. That is a fantastic return on investment. You're saying every time I spend money, I get 3,200% more dollars back. If there was a machine where you could push a button and spend $1 and get $320 back, the machine would have somebody pushing the button continually, right? That is an incredible return on investment. So that is a decision where you would probably say, yes, this seems worth it, unless you say, I don't have $3,500 in case the worst case scenario happens. If that's the case, then you know this is too risky of an investment. Now let's take it and look at a clinical decision. So something related not to the cost of the clinic as a whole or the goal of the clinic to get some Con Ed in as a whole, but what about me as the individual practitioner? What is the scenario where I might evaluate risk? What is the risk of teaching a workshop, right? So often we encourage you all, especially as you're growing a new practice, a new clinic, maybe you're opening a new location, to get out in the community and do some workshops, attract people to your clinic. What is the risk there? So same thing, start from the beginning. What is the maximal cost that I would incur, and what is the minimal cost I would incur? So say you're going to teach a workshop maybe on some pelvic health to a local gym. Maybe you think it will probably take me 5 hours to build out my presentation, get it ready, practice it, and actually go drive to the place and do the workshop. So 5 total hours. Maybe your hourly rate, your take-home pay, whatever you charge, your actual take-home is $60 an hour. Okay, 5 hours times 60 is it's going to cost me 5 hours of productivity, or about $300 to teach this workshop. So now we have to look at the best possible outcome. What am I going to get for this? The goal here obviously is to attract more patients. Maybe your goal is very modest, very realistic, that if I go teach a workshop to a group of 20, I'm hoping one person I connect with, one person sees the value in the services I have to offer, and they end up booking evaluation. Maybe that person shows up for 6 visits. Maybe they come in every other week, prepartum, postpartum, during pregnancy. They come in biweekly for 6 visits, and they pay your cash rate of $125. So you have generated $750 off spending $300 of your time. So not as good as the previous scenario, but we still have a return on investment above 100%, right? We've more than doubled our money. In this case, we have a return on investment of about 150%. That's still great. Again, if there was a machine where you could put $1 in and get $1.50 back and just push a button, you would stand at that machine all day and push the button, right? You're getting more money back than you spend in. That's a no-brainer. Obviously, we can't only prepare and deliver workshops in our work week. We can't do 8 workshops and not see any patients. We have to see some patients, and especially as we get busier, we're going to have less time for workshops. But you can see the value in looking at it, sitting down, being objective and data-driven with it, and looking at what is my return on investment. And you can start to see the decisions that initially you might pause and say, no way, the maximal worst case scenario is way too much money, instead of looking at what is the return on investment? What is the long-term investment that I'm going to get back? And in most cases, you'll see that the decisions that you're thinking about making that you evaluate is way too risky are actually not risky at all, and even can be quite lucrative. And we see a lot of folks avoid risk, be adverse to risk because of that initial, we'll call it shell shock, the sticker shock, right? It's kind of seeing, oh, I like that car. Ooh, wow, $80,000. I don't have $80,000 cash. But again, if we look at things of what's the maximum this is going to cost me, what's the best case scenario, and starting to crunch the math on what is the return on investment, we start to see most of our decisions are actually beneficial and not nearly as risky as we think they are. In our industry here, it might be perceived that the riskiest thing we could do is go teach a live course, right? There's a lot of costs associated with that, buying a flight, getting a hotel room, renting a car, paying for food out to eat, which is always going to be more expensive than being at home and making your own food. So that initial cost, that initial sticker shock might be too much. But in our industry, it's actually not any different to go teach a course to one person or 30 people, right? The cost of the plane ticket does not scale, right? Delta Airlines does not know how many people are going to be at my destination when I'm going there to teach. And so there's no extra cost once we commit that decision. If anything, over time, that decision becomes less and less and less risky because the initial investment stays the same and the return continues to grow over time. Now, you might be asking, to my third point here, what is a good return on investment? Only you will really know the answer to that, right? When we look at investing itself, we look at investing in stocks and we think about retirement funds and that sort of thing, 7 to 10% is a good ROI. Now, given that's passive, right? That's your stocks making money, your mutual funds, whatever you got making money over time. You're usually not too active in that. So that seems small, but again, it's passive. I would argue anything above 100% is great because at that point you are doubling your money. So if you sit down and look at these scenarios and the ROI becomes above 100%, it seems likely, given that you're okay with any worst case scenario that might happen, to make that decision because you know the potential to at least double your money is on the table. We also have to look at what might come downstream, right? We often don't even evaluate long-term return on investment. We look initially at, am I going to make money off this decision, off this investment? We don't even look at the potential streams that might happen from that decision. Say you do that workshop, that patient does show up. Maybe that patient is in a mom-to-mom Facebook group and she has a great experience with you. And she talks all about how wonderful you were to that group, and you start to get more evaluations that you didn't even have to work for, right? Oftentimes we ignore those long-term potential returns on investment. We're so focused in the short term on what is this going to cost me? What is this going to cost me? What is this going to cost me? And not what am I going to get for this? And what outcomes am I not even possibly seeing? Maybe that patient goes to her primary care or her OB and says, I went to this great physical therapist. They helped me with my back pain after I had my baby. They got my core stronger. They got rid of my stress incontinence. They had an assault bike. I was swinging kettlebells. I lost 5 pounds. Like, I had such an amazing experience. And that doctor says, I need to find out what those people are doing over there. And they call and say, hey, send us a script pad, right? I would love to refer people to you. It sounds like you and I are on the same page. Why don't you come over at lunch one day and we can talk? And you start to get referrals that you couldn't even have possibly predicted because you were so focused on what is this going to cost me in the short term and not what am I getting as a long-term investment. So think too, write out what are all the possible outcomes that could come secondary to this investment. And again, you'll start to see the decisions you initially value as very high cost, very risky, are actually quite lucrative and will result in quite a large return on investment. So learn to reevaluate risk. Be objective about it. There's a fallacy, a logical fallacy called the sunk cost fallacy, that once we've spent so much money on something, we kind of just sit and stew on our decision and we think nothing good can come out of it. And we've already spent too much money, so we might as well just keep what we're doing because we don't want to bail out. This can cause a lot of people to leave physical therapy and go become realtors and stuff, when in reality, we need to look at taking more quote unquote risk, that if we actually sit down, we become objective and data driven at it and we plan it out logically, we start to see these decisions that we may have been hesitant to make before are actually not that risky at all and can even be even more lucrative than we anticipated. So give that some thought about reevaluating risk. We know that we're too safe clinically as a profession, but I would argue we're also too safe from a business perspective as a profession. And then by starting to reevaluate risk, take on a little bit more risk, start to build more long-term investments, not only in our getting patients in the door, but on the decisions we make for our clinic that bring in things like cheaper equipment, bring in things like free Con Ed, that those decisions that we initially thought were incredibly risky are actually something we should probably be pulling the handle on more, sitting at that machine and pushing the button on more. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you all have a fantastic Thursday. I would love to chat about this with anybody who has any comments. You can throw them on Instagram. You can shoot me an email. I hope you have a wonderful Thursday. Have fun with Gut Check Thursday. Have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.